question of what is canon is an interesting question, and a lot more complex than I'll be making out to be in this response today.
For those who don't know, a person that I consider, well, honestly, to be as close as a brother to me, named the Anti-Tracker, has been doing a series on the movie First Contact. During this series, the Anti-Tracker has made some claims I find to be definitively false regarding weapon systems, transporting technology, and shields. Today we're going to be taking a look at transporters and shields specifically, and I'll get into weapons at a later point. Now, link to this series is in the description below. Definitely go ahead and take a look at it. And while I'm on that topic, during the series, he goes out of his way to take a personal shot at me and tries to take me to task about how in-depth of a lore master I am. So this is going to be kind of out of order, but I'm going to address that accusation first, and then come back and build my case for why he is wrong about all of these technologies. So in this, the Anti-Tracker is discussing how you can't beam through the shields, and then discusses the episode from TNG, Relics, which is an example that I used when he was talking about how you could or could not beam through shields. He dismisses what I say out of hand, and let's just listen to the clip.
All right, so moving on. By the way, Lore Reloaded tried to explain that you do see people beam through the shields inside of Relics as well. But again, Lore, since you are the lore master, look up the original screenplay. I would highly recommend that.
My problem here is that, as stated, I'm the lore master. I'm not the original screenplay master. I don't care what they put on the screenplay and what was supposed to be used. I also don't care what they thought might be a good idea but never comes up on screen. As a lore master, I have tried to keep a standard of alpha canon that is held by the intellectual property holder of the work. That means for Star Trek, I only use resources that are identified and specifically sanctioned by CBS and Paramount. Now, admittedly, I have failed at that, specifically in very early episodes of my career, but I have tried to get better, and alpha canon is not what is in the original teleplay. If I was going by the original drafts, I'd be saying that the Terran Empire was a polytheistic culture and they believed in the original Greek gods, and would break down all of the deviant aspects of the Ferengi, above and beyond what they currently have. But that's not alpha canon. Alpha canon is set by the IP holders. And for Trek specifically, the Senior Director of Product Development, Paula Block, has stated, "Canon in the sense that I use it is a very important tool. It can only get muddled when people try to incorporate licensed products into canon." There's a lot of bickering about licensing among fans, but in its purest sense, it's really pretty simple. Canon is Star Trek continuity as presented on TV and movie screens. Licensed products like books and comics aren't part of that continuity, so they aren't canon. And that's my point, Anti-Tracker. Full stop. The IP holders say it's only what's on screen. I don't care what a teleplay says, I don't care what a game says, I don't care what a book says. When I'm talking about alpha canon, I'm talking about what happens on screen.
But here I agree with Lore, but I would put it more simply in that all that matters to me is what we see on screen. Personally, I like that better than accepting what is officially sanctioned by CBS and Paramount. Those who watch my channel have noticed that I use the original release version and not the digital version. This too is part of the question of canon. The sanctioned version is the new version, but I prefer the original effects no matter how bad they are. There are two reasons I do not use the digital version. The digital version does allow for digital apologetics, like removing the moons of Vulcan or making a new cityscape for wink of an eye, because they just reuse the map painting from Taste of Armageddon anyways. The second reason is, if you allow for newer versions to be canon, then you have no stable canon. One example is the Taste of Armageddon and Wink of an Eye, which made it into my video, Star Trek vs. Evolution. I use this as an example of how the Preservers may have saved some Scalosians by moving them to Miniar 7, but that theory loses its biggest proof now that the cityscape has been changed.
The first argument that is brought to the table is that the explanations being provided by fans and myself are simply filling in the gaps, doing the work for the writers, that we're giving too much to the studio. Here's the clip that the Anti-Tracker uses.
Some of you guys, and don't get me wrong, I know you love Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I know you love First Contact. I didn't love it, but I really like First Contact. But you're filling in the gaps that the writers leave. And you're doing that out of love, out of caring, out of a sense that, hey, no, this has got to be good because it's Star Trek. This has got to be good because it's the Borg. This has got to be good because whatever reason, you're filling in the gaps rather than simply recognizing that, yes, this is a plot hole. Yes, you can definitely come up with some reasonable conclusions that explain away some of these plot holes. But if you don't include them in the movie, then it's still a plot hole.
While I will agree that many in the Trek fandom will make excuses and make leaps to try to justify things that don't make sense,
but here's the thing, that is part of the fun of dissecting the fiction you love. This is one of the things my channel is centered around. The first thing I am centered around is pure research. That is, noticing the little details both in dialogue and set, a pure research perspective. But the second part of what I'm doing is using that research to explain other gaps, whether the writers intended it or not. This can get a little zany, like in my episode Star Trek vs. the Speed of Plot, where I explain that there are these warp corridors that allow starships to take shortcuts. This is a silver bullet for most problems in Star Trek, because if it takes longer to get somewhere, then it's just a matter of no corridors being available. But if they get somewhere really fast, then they found one of these shortcuts. But here is the fun part. Except for naming the phenomena, I really don't make anything up. Well, also that they use this shortcut, but a more middle-of-the-road video would be my breakdown of the Star Trek V Turbo Lift. But then there's reasonable ones like the Star Trek Apologist versus Neil deGrasse Tyson, where I explain how over time accents can change, including the idea that maybe by the 24th century, LeVar France now uses an English accent. This is backed up by the fact that every actor in Family has an English accent. Sure, this explanation is made up, but I think it's rather reasonable. You see, what I like to do is add texture to the world of Star Trek using only canon sources, like in the aforementioned Taste of Armageddon.
while it's true that it is established in the episode Arena that you cannot bypass the shields via your transporters, in the episode A Taste of Armageddon, Scotty has the Enterprise screens, which screens are another term that are interused for shields, up due to a standoff with a hostile alien. It is a critical plot point here that Scotty cannot lower the screens, and again I mean shields when I say that, under any circumstances. And yet, a person beams down with the screens up. Oh, and yeah, apparently when you have shields up or screens up at this point, you can't fire weapons. The screens prevented it.
Where lore is wrong, you can fire photon torpedoes, just not phasers. They also never established that you can beam up through the shields, just that you can beam down through the shields. The first assumption here is that they only used one type of shields on starships. Why can't they have a different type of shield that are better for other situations? Now, this is all theory, not something seen on screen, but it is likely after the previous episode, Tomorrow's Yesterday, that they had a 3-week overhaul of the computer system while docked at Earth. While there, I suspect not only did Chekhov come on board, but that they installed these new shields because of the looming threat with the Klingons in Error and Mercy. We're close enough to the war that they may have already planned for the Enterprise task of securing Organia as a base of operations. Not knowing if there's going to be a fight, it does seem logical to have shields one could beam down with. None of this is canon, but it works. It adds texture to the universe that is otherwise not there. To me, this is the enjoyment I get out of Star Trek. The point of all this is that, to me, the joy is taking the lore of the universe and the errors and putting them together as a puzzle. My favorite one is the fact that Vulcan and Argelius 2 have the same 11-symbol zodiac. But if you want to know more about that, watch my video, Star Trek vs. Evolution. But I think the three of us should get together in a live stream and talk about this. I think it would be a lot of fun.